All right, everybody, we are back at it here, and the first day of the year, kicking off 2022. So, hope everybody had an awesome, holidays, with Christmas and all that, and a New Year's Eve. And I figured, what, let's just go ahead and kick it right off with our second to last Black Sabbath album review. Of course, we're capping off the '90s here with the album that really put the band in quite a bit of a purgatory for several years. I mean, over a decade. Forbidden. And kind of a weird looking album cover. It's got, it's kind of cool, but then whenever you look more into it, it's kind of hard to see on here, but like there's like kind of goofy looking caricatures and of the band even too. When you unfold the CD booklet, it kind of shows the whole image like that in the back of the unfolded booklet, but it's kind of weird little caricatures of the band here, but I mean it's a decent looking album cover. Even you kind of look past that stuff. The Grim Reaper's pretty cool on there, but the album cover is kind of reflective of the album itself. Kind of just a jumbled, just mess. I mean, man, like because there's a couple little cool things about it, but overall it's just kind of a mess. And man, this is a pretty universally hated album. For the lineup, we actually get back the Tour album lineup. So, Tony Martin obviously is still up in here. Geezer Butler's gone after Cross Purposes. Didn't like the way the band was going. So they got back Neil Murray from White Snake, and like I said, he was on Tour. He's back in the band here. We've got Cozy freaking Powell back on drums, so that's a hell of an addition right there. I do love that he's back up in it, and of course Iami on guitar, and Jeff Nichols still on board here on keyboards after all these years. But yeah, I mean, there's so many stories about this album from the band. They pretty much all of Black Sabbath members and everyone involved with this realized how much of a tragedy of an album it was. Even Tony Martin. It was like, we ought to remaster it and everything. I've heard even Tony Iommi say, like, the remaster's done. He's just waiting on the right time to release it. They've talked about this being the album that just, they were super rushed just to get it in, get it done so they can get out of this record deal and just pump out their last album with them. But, when you get a guy like, I think his name was Ernie C., who is just... he's the guitar player, I think, in that Ice-T group, Body Count, which more about him as he's involved up in here. So more about him in a minute. This Ernie C. guy decided to pop up in here and produce this thing and did a terrible job at it. There's a couple of good parts of production here and there, a couple little pieces that I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like it can be good. It's like it's a mess. Some of the songs... Like, I'll say, man, like at some parts the drums will be louder and more distinguishable. At some parts they won't. Some parts the vocals will be a little bit louder. Some parts they won't. And same with just like every instrument. It's just a mess. And we start off with the opening here. The Illusion of Power. Sounds kind of cool going on. And then you get right off the bat into this weird kind of verse thing with Martin just kind of like, not rapping, but like speed talking through this. I mean, man, it's rough. And again, the production is it's god awful on here. And Martin's voice just it's not put out there in the front like it should be, as well as a combination of his voice just not having the power like it did even on we saw a little bit of a decline on Cross Purposes on his voice, but he was still nailing some notes and singing great. This one, not too much. Then we get, the chorus is kind of cool. I do kind of like the chorus, and I think that was there could have been a good song here, but the verses are kind of shit, and especially speaking of Ice-T, he's up in here doing his little spoken word part in the middle. That just did not need to happen. And I've tried to it could have been worse. Because before I ever heard this album, and this is really like only the second or third time I've ever heard this album all the way through. And, but before I ever heard it for the first time, I thought, I heard Ice-T was even on a track. I was like, oh God, is he actually going to rap in a Black Sabbath song? So he doesn't do that. but he's doing this weird like spoken word part. It's dumb, and it never needed to happen. Uh, we don't need any rappers up in Black Sabbath, period. And it's just that is a enormous no-no and a freaking sin. So that makes this first track just no. It's a no-go for me. The chorus is kind of hooky, kind of cool, and there's a couple little vocal pops, from Tony on here, but from Tony Martin, but not a good one. Now track 2, I kind of dig, but it does suffer again for the production and kind of it's like there's a little bit of a raspiness going on in Martin's voice with Get a Grip. Really, really hooky chorus, and a cool riff going on here. This is one of the ones that could have been if the production was there, we could have had a pretty strong song. But I mean, it's a decent little track on here. Get a Grip is not a bad song at all. That's one of the ones that I'm like, okay, I can come back to that every once in a while. Definitely not something I'm gonna pop on when I think of Sabbath. Just instantly go to Get a Grip, but. Then we get on to Can't Get Close Enough, and a weird clean guitar tone from Tony. I mean, normally he can, do the cleans pretty damn well with his own distinct sound. This just sounds like a little bit like the grungy kind of thing going on, as far as the tone of the grungier, clean guitar tone. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's. And I this one's just cheesy to me in a weird way. And I know so is a lot of stuff I do dig, like maybe off of 7th Star, No Stranger Love. Maybe that's a little cheesy too. But this one, it's like the melody's just cheesy to me. It just sounds like, I don't know. I don't like the vocal work on this one. There's a cool little time change going on in there, but definitely don't like Can't Get Close Enough. Shaking Off the Chains, probably the most forgettable track off here, and it's rough. It just sounds like a mess. The worst produced track off here too. Just, man, you talk about a jumble. Shaking Off the Chains is one. Then we go to I Won't Cry For You, and this one has got some pretty solid vocal work from Tony Martin on it, during that chorus part, but it's just really repetitive, and I don't really like that song. It just kind of gets annoying to me. Not really a song, again, not one I like. And this is just crazy going through a Sabbath album right now where I'm not liking the majority of these, as if you've watched all the other reviews prior to this, I genuinely like every Sabbath album before this. But this one, we ain't going good right now. So, I Won't Cry For You is not a good one. Now we get to probably my favorite track off here that I think is actually a pretty badass tune. We're talking about Guilty As Hell. That riff is just, that's like a classic Iommi riff. I mean, that doesn't go down as one of his riffs. It's this is one of his most iconic and classic riffs. But I mean, it just has that classic Sabbath sound and that really hookiness to it, to the riff. And I love the vocal work, especially on the little part after the first chorus, the verse there. Martin does this kind of changes up. The second verse there vocally with a pretty cool little fill, and the chorus is really hooky, just kind of goes perfectly along with the riff. So Guilty As Hell, I think, is a great song. Does it suffer a little bit from the production being bad? Yeah, but this song is strong enough. It's pretty much, a lot of this is either the song's really bad or the production's masking good songs, and keeping them from being what they could be. But Guilty As Hell shines through all that, I think, and I think it's a pretty damn good song. So that's definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorites off there. Then we get Sick and Tired, which it's a pretty solid one. We get a little bit stronger here on this later half with Sick and Tired, kind of bluesy, some cool lyrics going on. In fact, it may be the bluesiest one of the bluesiest Sabbath songs that Tony Martin ever took part in, and sang on, because it's just a really kind of classic groove to it going on here, just solid groovy bass going on from Neil Murray. So I mean, at the same time, it's kind of forgettable when thinking about the entire Sabbath discography. It's just kind of a generic track for them, but it's not a bad song. Then we go to Rusty Angels, which is pretty good too. So you see, we're not all negative here. It gets better on the second half. So Rusty Angel's got a pretty cool chorus. The raspiness of Martin's voice starts to kind of get me a little bit on the wrong side for me. It starts losing me there again. Maybe he needed a rest or something after the tour. I'm sure he did after the Cross Purposes tour. The album just came out a year before, and they went right on tour, and then rushed in the studio. Maybe that's what it was, but I don't know. His voice just doesn't pack the punch it once had. And Rusty Angels kind of shows that. But I think it's an okay song, a pretty cool. I do like the kind of keyboard on here. Jeff Nichols saves this song big time from being, as bad as from being a terrible song, as well as, the chorus is pretty hooky. Then we go to two of the best ones off here that I think are also just pretty damn solid. We're going to Forbidden with some really dark lyrics going on here. Cozy Powell he makes his presence known on these last two, just banging away on the drums like he does. And, I think both these last two tracks on here, that I could hear them all honestly being on some of the previous Tony Martin albums, like a Headless Cross or Cross Purposes, definitely. Because maybe these ones were a bit, earlier in the stage of writing. I don't know the whole deal, but either way, Tony Martin's voice sounds quite a bit better on these last two tracks, I think. And, maybe these were some of the tracks that had a little bit more time put into them, because Forbidden has a really, really cool chorus and just really dark and a bit of a nihilistic take, just on life in general, which is kind of interesting to, delve into in a song. So, and just some really clever lyrics regarding that theme. So Forbidden, the title track here, is pretty badass. And so is the closer, Kiss of Death. I think that is another solid track. So, and again, another one where Cozy Powell starts really showing off, and Tony Martin starts really showing off, and you don't really hear as much as that raspiness. And those seem to be some of the tracks that sound a little bit better production-wise, too. Because like I said, it's just all over the damn place. Production, for the majority of this album, the production is garbage. Hot garbage. And even on the spots where it's not hot garbage, it ain't good. So, it struggles. But as you guys can see here, we've got an album that it's not good. And before going into, I was just dreading. I was like, oh damn, we're going here. But this did refresh me on the tracks I did like going in this time for this listen. So, Guilty as Hell, Forbidden, Kiss of Death, Rusty Angels ain't bad, Sick and Tired ain't bad, Get a Grip is a fun one. Those are some pretty decent tracks, with a couple of those, like Guilty as Hell being awesome and Forbidden and Kiss of Death being awesome. But, just the production kills this thing. Tony Martin's voice is a problem on here, which is, I hate saying because I love him, but he has a problem on here. The whole band is just a problem on here. They weren't in unison. You could tell they weren't really having a good time with this thing. The Ice-T stuff going on here. We just have insanity all over this album. And this is genuinely the only Black Sabbath album I don't like is this one right here. I try to go into it and, digging it or liking it. I do that with every album, even if I hear that it's been has horrible critics, because, sometimes I end up liking some of the ones that people end up hating. Sometimes it goes that way, and vice versa. But this is one that I think what I've heard most, people saying how much of an abomination it is. I mean, I can pretty much agree. Besides a couple songs, so not a good album. It's a nightmare. It's not the worst album I've ever heard by any means. But if we're talking star ratings out of 5, I'm going maybe 1.5. I mean, it's just a problem. It's terrible. And I've tried, and I am, I'm not going to say I wish it never existed, because it did give us a couple of these cool little tracks on here that of maybe what could have been and how, if they would have taken their time on this, or, and maybe this remaster that Tony Iommi comes out with, maybe it'll change this thing up and breathe a whole new life into it. And that would be so freaking cool if it did. Because I think they're, if maybe given more time and a better producer and take out the Ice-T stuff, and, there could have been a strong album here. But considering all the circumstances, it's terrible. But with that being said, guys, we've only got one more Sabbath album to go. What happens after this? Of course, we get the mini reunion tour kind of thing. That's what they were pretty much rushing this thing out with. Martin never gets a call back, so Ozzy joins back in on that reunion thing, which has got some pretty damn badass bonus tracks on it. I'll kind of talk about some extra stuff like that aren't in the rankings, like the ends, the bonus tracks, and that bootleg I got of the Eternal Idol that has Ray Gillen, and as well as the reunion album that has those bonus tracks. I'll kind of briefly touch on those in the ranking video, but those won't be counted in the ranking or won't get their own review or anything. But all that all that reunion thing kind of goes on, and then you just kind of eventually, I mean, just it's stagnant for a little bit. Sabbath is, and just they're all on hiatus. It's just stopped, and then we get the whole thing with Dio returning to him, but they go under a different name, Heaven and Hell, which that's pretty sweet. That's pretty awesome stuff too. But that I'm not counting it in here either. That'll eventually get a review on its own. But it's not technically a Black Sabbath album, even though I know it's that Mob Rules and Dehumanizer lineup of Black Sabbath. That's counted as another band, But then eventually we finally get back to an actual Black Sabbath album in 2013 with the aptly titled 13, with Ozzy back on vocals, Geezer back on bass, Tony Iommi, of course, still in the band, and with a different drummer, as Bill Ward, there were some complications going on. So can't wait to look at that and kind of put this thing down for a little bit. I've tried. I've got the enjoyment I can out of this thing. But if some of you guys do enjoy this in the comments there and want to talk about it and why, that is absolutely awesome. Because man, I wish I could get more enjoyment out of this, but it is a struggle. But if I've read some comments on YouTube videos of maybe songs or on this album, and I saw some people say it was their favorite Black Sabbath album. That's wild to me. Kind of an out there opinion, but that's cool. If that's really what they're digging, then that's awesome, man. So if you guys have any good experiences with this album, or maybe totally love it, or see it as a hidden gem or something, that's really cool too. So maybe let me know. I would love to talk about it and kind of see why, and see if we can maybe get more understanding as to why someone could like it and everything. So but yeah, thanks guys. Stay tuned for next time, the last Black Sabbath album review. It's been a long one, but we got 13 coming up next time, and of course the ranking video. And so like, subscribe, comment, and thanks guys.